Heyo, you're listening to Edge Coach Quip, featuring our very own Edge coaches and community, dropping knowledge nuggets to fuel your day.
Here it is, episode
100!
Confetti! This was crazy to scroll through.
This was so exciting. I know we've been looking forward to this episode for like the last, I think 5 or 10. We've been saying we're almost to 100. Like I don't know that we thought we would be doing this podcast at 100. Maybe
I could concur. Yeah, I can't believe that. Looking through it, it's like I forgot how much was done.
Yeah, and how many incredible topics that we've covered already. Great storytelling. I really enjoyed this episode because as part of this episode, Robyn and I chose our top 5 favorites, which was very hard to choose from, as a side note.
We had way more than 5 of these.
So 5 notable episodes for us that we enjoyed, but going through and just listening to them again was really awesome.
And we want to start off with a giant shout out to Coach Josh and Coach Becca who started this idea. We had an Edge podcast a long time ago by another coach, Coach Laura, and it was a longer format, really beautiful storytelling. And they came up with an idea to do it in these smaller chunks and came up with this concept of a quip. And then even got artwork made. You know, another member weighed in and did our music. And it was just this awesome collaboration that really resulted in something that was helping build better athletes, which is all about what we love to do here at Edge. And it's pretty amazing to see it in this form.
Yeah, what I love about the format is that it's an opportunity for all of our coaches to share the knowledge that they have and the experiences that they've had, but also the community quips, having our community members share, their knowledge nuggets, right, and their experiences. And I love being here and hearing people randomly talk about the episodes, or being in class or at a workout and having them reference something that a coach had said. So I know it's made an impact. So a huge thank you to Coach Josh and Coach Becca for getting this train started. And it's been really cool to watch it grow. Yeah,
the seed was planted by you. Also, a thank you to all of our coaches and community members who have weighed in thus far. Again, looking back over the 100 episodes, I was super proud of how varied our experts were, right? When they were weighing in, it was just this carousel of names, and it was very fulfilling, but also enlightening. Like we just said all our stats went berserk yesterday, because between both of us looking through everything, I probably listened to 25 of them. And it was, I was just taking notes kind of left and right, and it was really, really cool. So thank you if you've been on. We appreciate your energy, and it shows, because here we are at 100.
Yeah, and to everybody else who's contributed in any sort of way, the audio mixing, the intro, the theme music, right? That's all our community. Yep. So it really is a full community effort on these, and we are super grateful.
Takes a village.
All right, so in our bonus miles, we're going to each go through 5 of our favorite episodes for you to go back to and listen from our archives. Thanks to everybody who has been a part of this, and if you would like to be a part of this, reach out, let us know. We love having guests on, and we love your topic ideas as well. Tag us when you share this, and stick around for our 5 favorites each in our bonus miles.
All right, up first, speaking of planting a seed and watching it grow, just like Coach Quip, my top first one is going to be episode 5 with Coach Josh about the redwoods. I always joke that I don't have feelings. I teared up listening to this one. I remember where I was when I listened to it. Coach Josh just has a spiritual energy about him that is so zen, and everyone's very drawn to him, and this is why he's such a magnetic coach and human. He talks about going to visit the redwoods and just encourages everybody to go and do it if you haven't. It's this moment of awe. They're 2,000 years old as a species. A lot of them grow over 300 feet tall. They can be 20 plus feet wide. There's just like a might and a majesty about them. And then the punchline is the fact that their roots only grow 6 feet deep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense. Like how, these things are a lot of times coastal. There's lots of wind. How do they stand upright? And the answer is that the roots grow laterally. And you don't see a redwood growing in isolation for that very reason. They can't, because it can't stand on its own. And he, of course, then takes that metaphor and applies it to the communities that exist, here at Edge, or any type of community that you're a part of that you feel connected to, that in order to grow, we do have to grow outward in order to grow upward. And I love that idea that we can't grow in isolation. And I think that, especially after the last 3.5 years, nothing rings truer than that.
Yeah, I can't believe this was episode 5, because I also distinctly remember it.
Mic drop.
And also, any of Coach Josh's episodes, he is our storyteller.
Yes.
And I mean, this is a topic, this approach to our podcast was one that was very different than the way that I was interpreting how we would approach this, of like coaching tips. And this is absolutely a coaching tip and a piece of information, but the structure of it was just so beautiful. So highly recommend that you go back into our archives and look for anything that Coach Josh did. They are beautiful stories with great nuggets in them. This was a great one to choose to kick us off.
I know.
So my first choice here was The Little Things with Coach Matt. This is episode 22, and I think this actually was our shortest episode that is on our podcast. It's 2 minutes and 14 seconds. It is truly a knowledge nugget, but Coach Matt is talking about what is the difference between elite athletes and your everyday performers. And the answer is it's the little things, right? It's the little things that make a big difference. And it was just such a great reminder that a lot of times when we're trying to make change, we are thinking about the big global things that we want to be different in our lives. But the reality is the way that we make those changes is by changing the little things, by taking the stairs, by choosing the apple over the bag of chips, right? Like those very small things in the moment can lead to such big change. So I absolutely love this episode. It's a very fast piece of information, but such a good reminder.
And again, it practices what it preaches, right? It's the little things. It is short. It is succinct. It tells you what you need to do, and then you just go and do it, right? Which is a lot of what change is about. Right?
Exactly.
Just stacking. All right, my next one is episode 31. So we did, as you referenced in the quip, we did highlight community members, and this one, episode 31, features Andrew Maibach, who, if you know him, you love him. He's won a bunch of Edgies for being him, and it was all about This Is Water. I love, in general, if you know me, I love the concept of suffering and challenges, not in like a dark way, but in a thing that this is really what we're kind of guaranteed in life. And the idea that this is water all comes from this idea that we all encounter suffering, right? And if we react against it, if we start to interpret it and be like, oh, it's so unfair, we have one type of reaction, right? It's like this like grit, and it's difficult. And if we think about the fact that like this is just the environment, this is water, right? I'm a fish, this is water. We're not thinking that it's hard to swim through or hard to breathe. Then you move with it. The body, it's based on the premise too that the body and in general, us as athletes, nothing is owed to you on a training day or a race day. And if we back away from that, then all of a sudden, suffering becomes a thing that we're guaranteed. And the suffering, he says, is your water. This is water. Mm-hmm. How we process our suffering and how we frame it in achieving our goals really allows us to move past setbacks and not really let the emotional toll of challenges keep us from pushing forward, right? All of a sudden, we're not saying, man, that was a tough tempo run. There must be something wrong with me. I guess I'm giving up. You're saying, well, it's a tough tempo run. All right, like what could I do differently? And this is just part of the training. This is just part of the third that's really hard, like we've referenced in prior Coach Quips. It takes all of the sting out of that process. And so looking at the overall process as just water and letting it flow over you is such a beautiful, beautiful way to think about training and life and everything in between.
Such a good one, and definitely a highlight of our community quips.
Okay.
A lot of that one is about perspective, and that leads me into my community quip favorite, which is episode 63, Community Quip with Josh Sweeney. So the premise of this episode is that sometimes leaving things is hard, but the new opportunities that you get when you do leave behind something or close a door, the door that opens is always worth it.
Yeah.
And Josh Sweeney is a Paralympic gold medalist in sled hockey, triathlete, cross-country skier, and a former Marine. And I loved his perspective on when one door closes, another one opens, and that so many of the amazing things that he's been able to experience in his life are because of his ability to walk away from something. And even if that was difficult, like leaving the Marines to move on to the next chapter of his life, that what he moved into was always worth it, and that you never experience the greatness and richness of life if you're not willing to leave behind the comfort of what you already know. And I just thought this was such a beautiful episode of thinking about your perspective on things, that a lot of times we hold on to what we have, and whether that's referencing our paces, right? If we are sitting in our comfort zone of a pace that feels comfortable, we'll never get faster if we don't push ourselves into that discomfort and try to step into that next zone. So just applicable to every part of training and life on this one. The end of one chapter can be the exciting new beginning of something else, and if you have that perspective, really beautiful things can happen.
I do, I love that one. Don't be afraid to make changes, the only constant. Next up is actually one featuring this guy, Coach Chris over here. The struggle is real. Again, struggling and challenge and suffering. This is my mojo. You talk a lot in this one about the fact that we sign up for it. We willingly sign up to do hard things. And remembering, in the moment, struggling sucks. We can all say that. I mean, I had a run yesterday that was not good, right? But at the same time, remembering that we signed up for it and that if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. It's never saying I'm better than anyone else. It's saying that there's a bravery and resilience that lives inside of you. And because of the struggle, we always have the opportunity to attempt things again, right? Which is the beauty of all of this. I love it when you talk about, you bring it into real life. If you're having a hard, and mine was a speed run, if you're having a hard run, you have the ability to slow down or walk and recatch your breath and try again. If you're having a really tough moment in open water, you can flip onto your back, take a beat, recognize, struggling, this is hard, okay, let's try it again, flip it over and hit that reset. That is such a gift that this particular sport gives us, cannot be said enough. And instead of thinking of that struggle as a weight, think of it as that true opportunity so that all of us can move to becoming better versions of ourselves, good, bad, or ugly, right, from the process.
Yeah, the struggle is real, and I think a lot of these episodes that I have recorded before we started the video ones were definitely things that I needed to hear myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's almost like recording these was a little bit of therapy, because it was saying the things that I probably needed to hear in that moment. So gosh, how many times in the last 10 episodes have I said the struggle is real at some point during our filming when I mess up? But that's so true that we can pause and then re-record that segment and continue on. It was not just a training thing, a life thing, like you said.
Bring it on.
All right, my next one is episode 50, You Are More Than, with the OG Coach Becca. Coach Becca did a lot of our early episodes and also has a very soothing voice. Coach Becca and Coach Josh were just such a great combo.
We can never compare. We're so sorry you're stuck with us now.
But this episode, You Are More Than, it really just resonated with me because it's talking about comparison and sort of that comparison trap. I think I might have even done a follow-up episode on this because it was just so resonant. We are always, just as humans, our nature is to compare ourselves to others, and I think that's only gotten worse with social media and with things like Strava and things like that. So comparison to ourselves, or comparison to a past version of ourselves, or comparison to others. And the premise of this one is that you are not defined by your miles, by your pace, by your your PRs, by your DNFs. Like, you are a person who runs. You are not necessarily defined exclusively by being a runner. For me, I always like to tell my athletes that they're athletes. They're not triathletes. They're not runners. They're not specifically,
I like that.
I want them to think of themselves as athletes who are doing a specific sport, because, for a lot of us, I think there's this desire at some point in our athletics to dabble into something else. And we compare ourselves to a past version of ourselves, our old PRs, or our old expectations of how we show up, right? So, like, I'm not sure if I can be a triathlete because everybody knows me as a runner. And for me, this episode was about breaking free of some of that comparison. Specifically, I think the past self part resonated a lot because of the athletes that I work with who, as we get older, are comparing ourselves to past PRs and expectations when our life circumstances change. Our situations change. COVID changed everything. And we just can't be comparing ourselves to those versions. And even, like, we can't compare a marathon on a hilly course to a marathon on a flat course.
Or even the same course year on year.
Exactly. So I think we get caught in that comparison trap so often, and this episode was a really good one to shake me out of that.
All of us out of it.
Yeah.
All right, my next one is also Becca. As we noticed when drawing these up, this is back-to-back Becca. So episode 42, To Dare Greatly. This is a great segue into it. If you can let go of the comparison, problem that most of us have, you do have the ability to dare greatly. And she reads a quote by Teddy Roosevelt, and I'll read it to you because that really is the best way to talk about this one. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong the man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. And that, man, you can do hard things, whether that's training for something hard or, maybe studying for an exam that you don't know if you're going to pass. But why not give it a try? If the worst is that you fail, but fail daring greatly, those people are the ones that I have, honestly, the most respect for. If you hit your goals, I'm happy for you, let me tell you. I really, really am. But if you strive for something and fail, you are failing forward. And if we know that that is the worst that could happen, we're a hell of a lot more likely to start knowing that daring greatly is our worst case scenario, which is actually a pretty great outcome.
It's so good. And you just said failing forward, and I love that idea because, this kind of leads into my next one, which is an episode that you did, which is episode 43, It's Just Running with Coach Robyn. Failing forward. So when we're thinking about taking that pressure off of ourselves, that what's the worst that can happen if we do try to push ourselves out of our comfort zone and don't accomplish that pace or that distance or whatever, it's just running. And at the very worst, we've failed forward.
Yep.
So you recorded this episode in the middle of marathon training as people were starting to be in that position where they weren't quite sure if they could do their goals or they could meet their time goals. And you also talked about the taper period where people get really amped up and in their feelings about anxiety and whatnot.
My least favorite part of training.
Like, as a coach, that week is a tough week before race day, especially when we have so many athletes doing that one race. But the anxiety, the nerves, are amping up, and it's good. That's a great thing because we know that it
matters.
Exactly, it matters. But when those pre-race nerves are hitting, this mantra that you talk about is a really simple way to reset, and it's just running, right? It does mean something, and it is important. But at the end of the day, it's something we do for fun. It's something that we are, in a lot of cases, paying a lot of money to do when we're racing. And, it's just, running is so simple. It's just you and the road and your 2 feet, and we can do it. I mean, this is why so many people love running, right? It's just, it's a lot more accessible than a lot of sports. But it's a simple task at the end of the day. It's not an easy task necessarily, but it's simple.
It's real simple.
And so that mantra of, in those tough moments, you said to just think about, it's just running, it's just running, it's just running. I love that reset. And I think so many of mine are about perspective of my favorites, and this was a really great one.
I'll say it over and over. All right. My fifth and final is another community quip because, as usual, all of our coaches and all of our community members are way smarter than myself and way more in tune with myself. And this one was Melissa Parif, and I just wait for my last comment on this one. So Melissa wrote and then very, very eloquently talked about letting your failure fuel you. And if you know Melissa, you know that she is a just certifiable badass that never gives up. Her coach, we like to talk as coaches about like who is your favorite athlete to coach, not to pick favorites, but to highlight what characteristics we like, really to kind of surround ourselves with as coaches. And her coach, without hesitation, always says Melissa Parif. When she recorded this, she had tried and failed at completing an Ironman, which is a major, major distance, 2 times. And she talks about how she started to see herself as a failure instead of someone who failed to reach a goal. And that is a really important distinction. Again, she's a very self-aware person. And really looking at things as a learning opportunity is what allowed her to move and fail forward. First, she gives 5 tips. First, she talks about feeling all the feels so that she can allow herself to see that she is failing and really finding a purpose in how to move forward. So give yourself that moment. 2, have an honest assessment of what went wrong and create solutions for, what we think we can do better next time. 3 is to commit to doing it different. Thinking about it and doing it are different things. So don't be scared to make some changes. 4 is creating a plan, creating a new plan for a new path forward, right? Again, she talks about the tangible goals for action, going back to Coach Matt's. Small, tangible goals, process goals that will stack and eventually add up to an achievement, hopefully, of the goal. And then throughout, to execute, assess, and refine. Don't be scared of changing those over and over and over. The best part is she recorded this before she completed. And guess what? Probably a year later, she completed her goal with like an hour to spare. So she annihilated this goal, but she had to let that failure fuel her forward in order to accomplish it.
This was an episode that I begged for. I think just watching Melissa's journey as an athlete and watching her resilience and her perspective on things, this was an episode that was just so helpful, and I was just so happy. It's a beautiful episode. It is so incredibly touching if you've watched her go through this journey, and it's just so inspiring.
Oh man,
just so many nuggets.
When she raced last fall, and I don't think I've ever seen the community like just obsess over tracking her. I'm pretty sure we broke the tracker record. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. And my final episode is a recent one that we did, episode 91, our 5-minute tips to be a better you. I loved this one because we surveyed our Edge coaches for tips if they had 5 minutes to dedicate to doing something to be a better person or a better version of themselves. And not even necessarily just a better athlete, but just better in general. What would you do? And I thought our answers were so varied, but also really brilliant. So we talked to all of our coaches, and you'll have to go back to get all of those tips. Go back to episode 91 recently and watch that. But the ending tip, I'll just say this, the ending tip was a total game changer for me, and thinking about how it's the little things just to connect it all together. This was one that, for a 5-minute change it so significantly impacted my life, and I think a lot of people's. So check out episode 91 for our 5-minute tips from our coaches. I just love that we had the opportunity to bring everybody in and give all of those different perspectives, because we don't always have the chance to have all the coaches sit down with us.
And we'll continue to do that. I think we agreed that one was one of the most fun to ever record, too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is it. Episode 100, everybody. We did it. We're here.
Is the confetti going to fall soon? All right, we look forward to episode 200 when we recap 100 to 199 with even more quips.
Yeah, see you in 2 years for that one. But in the meantime, stick around every Monday for new episodes of Coach Quip. And please feel free to email us, tag us on social media, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review, and all of those things to help us keep these episodes going and reaching more people. And anything else?
No, that's it.
100 episodes in the bag. It's awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Mend. Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.